thumb about the color of the earlobes. It's not something genetically programmed into the chicken. Heat and cold tolerance I'll talk about really quick. So generally what's going to make a bird be able to tolerate the heat is having a big comb so that there's a lot of, exposed skin to dissipate that heat, and then not having feathery legs. A chicken that could, survive a freezing cold winter is going to be the opposite. They're going to have a small comb, and they don't have to have feathery feet, feathery legs. So I'm on La Mesa, it's hot there. Generally, you just want to make sure that they can find some shade, during the summer when it's really, really hot. When it was 105 for 3 days, everybody except for the one who was sitting on the coop or sitting on the nest not drinking water, trying to hatch eggs, everybody else survived just fine.
Do you ever trim their feathers or anything like that? You're not worried about, you said they kind of find their home and stay there, so you're not worried about them flying over the fence and running away, I guess.
If they meet your dog one day...
They fly. They can fly pretty good, right? They
get
get up.
The best, but they can get
they get up into that tree.
Yeah. Chickens are really funny. The ones that are just let's say they have everything they need. They're not going to look, if they're one of the more flighty breeds, I've heard there's a breed called the California White that put it in an enclosure, it finds a way out. It doesn't want to be enclosed, it wants to go do its thing. The breeds I have just don't mind hanging out.
They have free food
yard.
coming every day and all.
Yeah, they're like, why would I leave? I have I eat bugs, I scratch in the dirt, I take my dust baths, I'm not going anywhere. I heard a really funny story, and I've actually heard it from different sources. These people, they had a fence, yay high. Chickens never hopped the fence. One day, they hear a chicken at their door. They go over, and there's this chicken. Turns out they'd forgotten to open the coop at night so that the chickens could get back in. So the chicken set a messenger over the fence. Comes to the door, hey, let us in. The other chickens are waiting in front of the coop. And they're they've never hopped the fence before or since. So it was they needed to one day, and out they went. But, they could, they just didn't. What I've seen in my own yard is that the first day a chicken meets my dog, they get really flipped out, and they want to go, the dog comes to sniff them, and they want to go over the fence. My dog, he's this big, friendly, dumb dog. He wants to eat their poop, he wants to sniff their feathers, he doesn't want to eat them. But the chicken doesn't know that, So that's a good way to get a chicken over the fence in my yard. So generally what I do is I anticipate that when I get a new girl in, she's going to want to do that when she meets the dog. I put them in the coop for a day or so. They meet the dog that way so that they can't escape when they meet the dog, and they'll chill out. And they run away from the dog. They cluck very disapprovingly at my cat, but they don't fly over the fence now. But again, it depends on breed. So if you get a more docile breed, and you might experiment with a breed, I got one of a breed called a Wyandotte, found it to be very aloof, not friendly to humans, didn't care for it much, got rid of it, so you might, you don't have to stick to the exact breeds I told you, but those are ones, if you want a sure thing, those are ones where you're really not going to have a lot of problems. Anybody here have cats or dogs they're worried about? Not really? Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
I had a dog that's just vicious. He's just a little guy, and he'll fight with, a pit bull. And I was able to train him to, within a week, and he loves the chickens. And
really?
Sleeps with them and takes care of them, and eats their poop.
Oh, that's adorable. And I've heard, you go to farms and they have dogs, and the dogs aren't killing the chickens. But, when people tell me my dog would kill the chickens, I'm like, okay, I'm not, your dog, I'm not going to contradict you. But I think our dog gets it, like you said, that these guys aren't food. He was really excited when he saw his first chicken.
Right.
As for a cat, I would recommend doing what we did, and we did it totally inadvertently. We didn't start out with baby chicks. So one question is, do you get a baby chick, do you get eggs, or do you get a full-grown hen? We chose to skip the eggs because you need an incubator, and I didn't want to pay for one, and use it once and then not have it again. If you get baby chicks, you need to have them in the house, you need to put a lamp over them, you need to have them in a box, they're messy, they're naughty, they smell a little bit. We didn't do baby chicks at first, we got adults. We didn't know it, but we accidentally got a rooster. And these grown-up chickens, first of all, they're pretty big for a cat to kill. You know, like a full, and they're large breeds. I mean, my cat really can't take down a chicken. She probably could, but she's not going to. But the rooster gave my hunting cat a chase, and she looks at him like, what the hell are you? And to, like, after that, you know, we got baby chicks, because my kids wanted some chicks to raise from, you know, from day olds. And I wanted to know how the cat would react, and I held it up to her face, and she's like, and she ran away. So she kind of associates chickens with this rooster that scared the bejesus out of her. And so I would say if you do worry about your cat, if you get them when they're not chicks to begin with, you can bring in chicks after that. But let's see. Let's talk about really quick pecking. So if you've heard that chickens can peck each other to death, that's true. They do have a pecking order. Queen Elizabeth is the head of the pecking order at my house, and she keeps everybody in line. But generally, if your chickens are not stressed, you will not have a problem that they peck each other to death. So like in an industrial situation, they actually remove the tip of their beak. They debeak them. Mine are not debeaked. Mine don't need to be debeaked. We've never had a pecking situation. I've seen kind of a, hey, I'm in charge, this is my food sort of peck. And you can tell the difference between a, like, get away from my food and I'm going to kill you peck. Like, it's, you know, it's kind of a peck in their direction, but they're not really going to do any damage. You know, just, hey, get back in line, this is mine, sort of thing. I'm top of the pecking order. If one of your chickens gets injured, that's when they will peck it to death. So they kind of, like, you know how, like, they say, oh, if an animal is in pain, put it out of its misery. Your chickens will do that for you. So if you have a chicken who's bleeding and it's not fatal and they should survive, you'll want to separate them from the coop, because otherwise when the rest of the chickens see blood, they're just going to go after that chicken. I've never had a case of that. When you introduce new chickens, you're going to have a little bit of jockeying for spots in the pecking order, and it can get a little bit rough. I've had easier times with baby chicks when I've brought the baby chicks in that are a couple weeks old. Because when they're about 4 weeks old, they could start living outside. And we just make sure that we have a big enough space that the chickens can all, you know, run in different directions and have their space, and the babies can hide. I put feed in 2 different spots. I give everybody a lot of treats on the week when I introduce them, so that nobody feels like they're competing. I mean, they're chickens, they still act like they're competing, but there's so much food that you don't really have to fight over it, and it's all dispersed throughout the yard so that they're not really in the same spot focusing on each other. That tends to help. But when I've introduced adult chickens, what I've had to do is just put the new girls inside the coop while the established flock was outside, and they could kind of look in and see the new girls and kind of get to know them without really pecking the crap out of them. But in general, I have a friend who's a farmer who says, if you have one chicken that everybody else pecks, eat that chicken. If you have one chicken who's pecking everybody, eat that chicken. And if everybody's pecking everybody, then your birds are all stressed and you have a problem and you need to change something. So generally, you know, the reason why they all peck each other in an industrial situation is because they don't have appropriate amounts of space, they can't engage in natural bird behaviors. Chickens want to be able to take a dust bath. You know, they want to do certain chicken things, and if they can't do it and they're confined in a tight space, they're going to peck the crap out of each other. So it's not something you should have to deal with very much. Diseases, if you were to ever have a sick chicken, sometimes you don't know until you find a dead chicken. That happened to me once. I kind of saw bloody diarrhea around. I figured somebody probably had coccidiosis. I didn't know who. And one day Rosie was dead. So we buried her, and my fig tree is growing really nice now with a couple dead chickens under it. And it's, you know, I've come to just not think of it as a huge deal to lose a chicken. If you want to take your chicken to the vet and pay for a vet, you can. In some cases they can help, in some cases they can't help. Because a lot of, like, the veterinary work that's been done on chickens, like, some of the tests can only be done post-mortem. So, you know, they're like, well, it could be any number of things, and, you know, the vet doesn't always necessarily know.
the disease and like spread to other chickens? Like,
no, we've not. You know, so generally the biggest one to know about, like the only one I'd say you should really know about is coccidiosis. And basically, I think they're protozoa, but they're some kind of microorganism, and it's in the soil everywhere, these coccidia. And your chickens are going to eat dirt, they're going to eat whatever, they eat anything they could get their beak on, honestly. And so they're going to ingest some of it. And most birds, they just develop immunity as a baby, and they're fine, and they deal with it, they just develop immunity. Birds are more likely to get sick when they're young. And if they were to get sick, and some people feed their babies medicated feed, I personally don't. But if you give them medicated feed, you know that's going to deal with it. If you don't, they might get sick, and they might die, or they don't. You know, but either way, no matter what, whether they get sick or not, every bird's going to be exposed to coccidia. Most of them are just going to develop immunity. Most of them are not going to wind up being sick. If you do notice bloody diarrhea, that's the symptom of it. If you can figure out who is it that has it, there's a medication you can give them. You don't need a prescription, you can just buy it over the counter. So a lot of livestock drugs, you don't need to, like, it's not like a human drug where you need to go to, you know, a doctor and get a prescription. So you might be able to get it over the counter somewhere, or over the internet, or whatever. At a feed store, perhaps. But I just kind of let the chips fall where they may and assume that, you know, I want my birds to have that immunity. I want them to have a strong immune system. I want to improve my flock. So I haven't really done much with the medication. About feed, organic feed is going to be non-medicated. So if you buy organic feed, you're cool. If you buy non-organic feed, check to make sure it's not medicated. I have a really scary story from a family, I think it was in Utah. They had backyard chickens. They bought the wrong feed. It had medication with arsenic in it that's normally given to meat birds but not layers because it goes into the eggs. And so then the kids had arsenic in them because they were eating the birds' eggs. And so the human children were eating the eggs and getting arsenic. Don't do that. Don't buy feed with arsenic. And I think one of the biggest manufacturers, I think it was Pfizer, but they took that drug off the market temporarily, and they're looking into whether it's bad to give chickens arsenic because it actually puts a little bit of arsenic in the meat, it turns out. So that's what you get when you buy grocery store chicken. Or at least that's what you used to get, and you know, it's temporarily, maybe you don't anymore. But generally, you know, make sure you're not buying medicated feed. Unless you personally don't have a problem with medication coming into your eggs, going out in the poop, going into your garden through the fertilizer, I would not want that. And if you were to buy medicated feed, the drug with arsenic in it, what's the name? I can give you the name of it later. Like if you're actually thinking of going that route and buying medicated feed, but you could Google it. You could Google like arsenic and chicken feed or whatever, and you'll find it. That's Roxarsone. That's the name of the stuff. Although there's brand names to it. So that's kind of the gist on the feed. That's my little word of warning. And City Farmers is a good source for organic feed. Anything else? So anybody, are you thinking about getting eggs?